Well, thanks. I hope not. I don't. I think it's all part of where we came from as well.
Ringo Starr, born Richard Starkey on July 7th, 1940, in Liverpool's Dingle neighbourhood, grew up in a world far from the rock stardom he would later achieve. His early life was marked by hardship, illness, and family strife. Raised by his mother, Elsie, after his parents' divorce when he was just 4, Ringo experienced emotional turmoil and poverty. Despite these challenges, his love for music began to take root. His journey from a troubled childhood to becoming a world-renowned drummer is a testament to his resilience, creativity, and unwavering determination to rise above the adversity that defined his early years. The early life of Ringo Starr, from struggles to drumming dreams. Ringo Starr, born Richard Starkey on July 7th, 1940, in the rough neighbourhood of Dingle, Liverpool, had a childhood shaped by hardship and challenge. Ringo's early life, far from the glamorous stardom he would one day achieve, was one of adversity, illness, and loss. His family, once filled with joy and social vibrancy, quickly descended into a world of dysfunction after his birth. His parents, Richard Starkey Sr. and Elsie Glee, had been a part of Liverpool's lively social scene. His mother, a former dancer, had been passionate about ballroom dancing, while his father, a stevedore, was known to enjoy music and a good drink. But with the arrival of baby Richard, things began to change. The once happy and active couple found themselves struggling with the overwhelming responsibilities of parenthood. Elsie, determined to protect her son from the harsh realities of the world, became more reclusive and absorbed in her care for little Richie. Meanwhile, Richard Sr., known as Big Richie, withdrew from the family, preferring to spend his time at the pub rather than with his wife and son. Their marriage slowly began to unravel, and in 1944 the couple divorced. This left Ringo, just 4 years old, with the painful knowledge that his family was broken and the emotional scars that would follow him for years. A childhood of illness and isolation. Ringo's troubles deepened as his health began to deteriorate. At the tender age of 6, he was struck by a sudden illness, appendicitis, that would change his life forever. What was supposed to be a routine appendectomy quickly escalated into a nightmare. The surgery led to complications, and Ringo developed peritonitis, a dangerous infection in the abdomen. His recovery, slow and painful, kept him bedridden for an entire year in the hospital. During this time, Ringo was isolated from the world, his family, and his friends. He missed a full year of school, falling behind academically. Despite these challenges, it was in the hospital where Ringo discovered a love for music that would eventually shape his entire future. In the sterile and lonely hospital wards, staff encouraged the children to play music to lift their spirits. Ringo, never one to sit idly by, began tapping on anything he could find: tables, the sides of his hospital bed, and even makeshift instruments like the backs of chairs. It was here, amid the isolation and pain, that Ringo found solace in rhythm. His innate ability to create beats on any surface was the spark that would later ignite his career as a drummer. But life wasn't done testing Ringo. In 1953, after a brief period of recovery, he was struck with another setback: tuberculosis. Once again, Ringo found himself confined to a hospital for extended treatment, this time for 2 long years. This second bout of illness was even harder than the first, as it left him more physically frail and emotionally distant from his peers. He missed out on much of his childhood, but during his time in the hospital, he remained absorbed in his growing love of music. Ringo would spend hours listening to records, dreaming of a life where he could escape the confines of illness and create something extraordinary. The birth of Ringo Starr. In 1957, Ringo's life would change once again with a significant gift from his stepfather. For Christmas that year, Harry Graves gave Ringo his first proper drum kit. a second-hand set that included a snare drum, bass drum, and a makeshift cymbal fashioned from a bin lid. This was the turning point in Ringo's musical journey. No longer constrained to tapping on household items, Ringo now had a real drum kit to hone his craft. With this gift, Ringo was able to take his talent to the next level, playing with various bands in Liverpool and establishing himself as a talented, yet unassuming musician. Despite his early success, the rise of American rock and roll music in the UK began to overshadow the skiffle scene. This shift in musical tastes prompted Ringo to seek out new opportunities. By 1959, he joined Al Caldwell's Texans, a band that was beginning to transition from skiffle to full-fledged rock and roll. It was during this period that Ringo officially adopted the stage name Ringo Starr, inspired by the rings he wore and his desire to create a name that was both memorable and had a Western flair. This decision to change his name was symbolic of Ringo's transformation from a humble working-class boy to a budding musical star. Rising fame with Rory Storm and the Hurricanes. Ringo's most significant breakthrough came when he joined the popular Liverpool band Rory Storm and the Hurricanes in 1960. Rory Storm, the charismatic lead singer of the group, was a rising star in the local music scene, and Ringo's addition to the band helped propel their success. By the time the group had secured a residency at the Butlins holiday camp in Wales, they were becoming one of the hottest acts in Liverpool. Despite the glamorous opportunities this gig offered, Ringo faced a difficult decision: whether to continue his apprenticeship as a machinist or follow his passion for music. Ultimately, Ringo chose music, a decision that would alter the course of his life forever. The band's residency in Wales opened doors to bigger and better opportunities, including a tour performing for US Air Force bases in France. However, the tour was marred by tension between the French and British, leaving Ringo and his bandmates disillusioned with the experience. Despite this, the Hurricanes were doing well enough to initially decline an invitation to perform in Hamburg, Germany, in favour of continuing their Butlins commitment. Eventually, they reconsidered and headed to Hamburg, where they would encounter the Beatles for the first time. Meeting the Beatles, a fateful encounter in Hamburg on October 1st, 1960, Ringo's path crossed with that of the Beatles. The Beatles at this point were still an unknown act, but they were quickly making a name for themselves in the German club scene. The two bands, Rory Storm and the Hurricanes, and the Beatles, played at the famed Kaiserkeller Club, with Rory Storm and the Hurricanes as the headliners. Ringo, as a guest drummer, sat in with the Beatles for the first time, joining them in a recording of Summertime. This encounter marked the beginning of an extraordinary collaboration between Ringo and the Beatles. Though Ringo was still part of Rory Storm and the Hurricanes at this time, the chemistry between him and the Beatles was undeniable. His drumming style, energetic and inventive, perfectly complemented the Beatles' sound, and it wasn't long before he became an essential part of their lineup. This meeting in Hamburg would set in motion the events that would lead to Ringo Starr's legendary status as the drummer of one of the most iconic bands in music history. A rocky start. Ringo's first days with the Beatles. Ringo's first performance with the Beatles took place on August 18, 1962, at a dance in Port Sunlight, a village near Liverpool. Although Ringo was officially part of the Beatles, the transition was far from smooth. On his very first day with the band, there were challenges to overcome, both musically and emotionally. The Beatles were now in the public eye, and they faced intense scrutiny from their ever-growing fan base. The very next day, at the iconic Cavern Club, Pete Best's fans launched a furious protest, chanting "Pete Forever" in an attempt to show their displeasure at Ringo's arrival. The backlash was immediate and loud, and even though Ringo had already won over the Beatles with his drumming, he was now faced with angry fans who were unwilling to accept the change. This hostility reached a boiling point when, during the protests, George Harrison, the Beatles' lead guitarist, was punched by an angry fan. It was clear that Ringo's arrival was not universally welcomed. To make matters worse, Epstein, recognizing the tension and potential danger, had to hire a bodyguard to protect Ringo from further threats. The early days of Ringo's tenure with the Beatles were filled with challenges, and the band's transition from the local Liverpool scene to international fame was not as smooth as it might have appeared. Despite these rocky beginnings, Ringo's place within the Beatles was solidified. By September 4, 1962, he entered the recording studio with the band for their very first session together. However, things did not go according to plan. Producer George Martin, who had been impressed by Ringo's drumming, was still unsure about his ability to handle the pressures of recording. Martin, known for his perfectionist tendencies, brought in session drummer Andy White to play on the band's debut single, Love Me Do. Ringo was relegated to playing the tambourine, a move that sparked fears within the drummer that he might soon be replaced. Overcoming doubts. Ringo's rise to fame. Ringo's early days with the Beatles were a time of uncertainty. The band had not yet reached the dizzying heights of fame that would soon define them, and Ringo was concerned about his place within the group. "I thought that was the end," Ringo later admitted, recalling his feelings of doubt after being demoted to tambourine duty. He feared that the band was pulling a Pete Best on him, slowly edging him out in favour of a more capable drummer. But, as time would tell, this concern was short-lived. Martin's decision to bring in Andy White was simply a precaution, and Ringo's drumming would soon become an integral part of the Beatles' sound. By November 1962, Ringo had earned the full support of the Beatles fan base. His charm, energy, and infectious personality won over audiences and critics alike. Ringo was no longer just the drummer of the Beatles. He was a beloved figure in his own right. Fans began wearing I Love Ringo lapel pins, and songs like I Want to Kiss Ringo Goodbye and Ringo for President became hits in their own right. Ringo's natural sense of humour and easygoing personality helped him connect with fans, and he quickly became one of the most popular members of the band. The Beatles' success skyrocketed in 1963, particularly after the release of their second single, Please Please Me, which shot to the top of the charts. Their television appearance on the popular show Thank Your Lucky Stars marked a pivotal moment in their rise to fame, establishing them as the biggest band in the UK. Ringo, with his distinctive charm, became a crowd favourite, and as Beatlemania exploded across the UK, he found himself at the centre of it all. The international spotlight Ringo shines in the US. By February 1964, Ringo and the Beatles had crossed the Atlantic to perform on The Ed Sullivan Show, a pivotal moment in their history. With 73 million viewers tuning in, the Beatles were introduced to America, and Ringo's star power shone brightly. His charisma and sense of humour quickly endeared him to American audiences, and the band's popularity grew exponentially. "I knew I went over well in the States," Ringo later said, recalling the overwhelming reaction from the American crowd. "It was unbelievable. We were just ordinary lads, but we'd made it." The Beatles' success continued to build throughout the year. Their performances became iconic, and Ringo's role within the band grew. His charm, quirky sense of humour, and infectious enthusiasm contributed to the band's global appeal. His personality became a key element of the Beatles' charm, making him a fan favourite in his own right. The trials of Beatlemania, health struggles, and touring fatigue. As the Beatles' popularity reached unprecedented levels, the pressure of Beatlemania began to take its toll on the band. In 1964, while the group was preparing for a world tour, Ringo fell seriously ill with tonsillitis and pharyngitis. This illness forced him to miss 5 concerts, during which time session drummer Jimmy Nicole filled in for him. Ringo feared that his time with the band might be over, but he eventually rejoined the group in Melbourne, and his return was met with thunderous applause from fans. Despite this setback, the relentless pace of Beatlemania took its toll. The band had been touring non-stop, and the pressure was beginning to weigh heavily on all of them. During a performance in Montreal, Ringo even received a chilling death threat, prompting him to adjust his drum kit for protection. The Beatles' personal and professional lives were increasingly strained, but their creativity continued to flourish. Revolver and the rise of Ringo as a songwriter. By 1966, the Beatles released Revolver, an album that marked a new phase in their musical evolution. The album featured the iconic hit Yellow Submarine, which gave Ringo his first opportunity to sing lead vocals on a British #1 single. Although his role as a songwriter within the band was limited, Ringo's contribution to the Beatles' sound was undeniable. The success of Revolver solidified the band's place in music history, but by the end of the year, the relentless touring schedule had taken its toll on the band. Ringo reflected on the decision to stop touring, saying, "We gave up touring at the right time. 4 years of Beatlemania were enough for anyone." The band retreated into the studio to work on their next major project, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Tensions within the band. Ringo's brief departure. By 1968, internal tensions within the Beatles were becoming increasingly apparent. During the recording of the White Album, Ringo briefly quit the band, frustrated by the passive-aggressive behaviour between John Lennon and Paul McCartney, and by McCartney's increasingly controlling role in the creative process. Ringo retreated to Sardinia, where he found solace in the quiet of the Italian countryside, and wrote Octopus's Garden, one of his most beloved contributions to the Beatles' catalogue. Ringo's absence was short-lived. When he returned 2 weeks later, George Harrison greeted him with a peace offering, covering his drum kit with flowers. Despite this reconciliation, the cracks within the band were beginning to show, and by 1969, the Let It Be sessions were marked by tension and frustration. Life after the Beatles, Ringo's solo career. In the wake of the Beatles' breakup, Ringo Starr stepped out of the shadow of his former bandmates to forge his own path as a solo artist. His debut single, It Don't Come Easy, released in 1971, was an instant hit, demonstrating that Ringo was more than just the drummer of the Beatles. This success was just the beginning, as Ringo went on to achieve 2 #1 singles in the US, Photograph and You're 16, further cementing his place in the spotlight. Ringo's success as a solo artist was not confined to the music industry. He also made a name for himself on television, hosting various shows, and even narrating the beloved children's series Thomas and Friends. His distinctive voice became a staple for a new generation of fans, and his role as Mr. Conductor on Shining Time Station introduced him to an entirely new audience. The All-Star Band, A New Chapter. In 1989, Ringo Starr embarked on yet another chapter of his musical career with the formation of Ringo Starr and his All-Star Band. The concept of the All-Star Band was simple yet brilliant. Ringo would bring together a rotating lineup of accomplished musicians, each with their own moment in the spotlight, creating a dynamic live show that was both nostalgic and fresh. The band's high-energy performances, filled with both Beatles classics and Ringo's solo hits, became a fan favourite and proved that Ringo Starr had not dimmed with the passing years. From his early days with the Beatles to his successful solo career and beyond, Ringo Starr's journey through music has been nothing short of remarkable. His infectious personality, dedication to his craft, and unwavering connection to his roots have made him one of the most beloved and enduring figures in music history. A personal highlight, Rain and the mastery of technique. One of Ringo's most celebrated moments as a drummer came with the Beatles' track Rain, which was released in 1966 as the B-side to Paperback Writer. Ringo himself often cited his performance on this track as his finest recorded drumming. The song, which features complex time signatures and a dreamy, psychedelic atmosphere, was a perfect vehicle for Ringo's drumming. his subtle fills and dynamic sense of space were showcased in a way that perfectly complemented the track's hypnotic, shifting rhythms. Ringo's ability to play with such sensitivity and creativity made Rain one of the most revered drumming performances in rock history. It wasn't just the technical aspects of drumming that made Ringo's performance on Rain stand out, however. His ability to bring a certain emotional depth to his playing, to play with nuance and feeling, was what truly set him apart from his contemporaries. Ringo's drumming was never about showcasing his technical prowess, but rather about serving the emotional tone of the song. In Rain, he did just that, creating a groove that was hypnotic and evocative, supporting the song's themes of longing and disillusionment. Recognition and legacy. A drummer's influence. Acknowledged over time, Ringo's unique contributions to music became increasingly acknowledged by critics and fans alike. His drumming was never flashy or overbearing, but it was always musical, creative, and indispensable. In 2011, Rolling Stone readers ranked him as the 5th greatest drummer of all time, an honour that solidified his place among the most celebrated drummers in rock history. Ringo's inclusion on this list is particularly significant because, unlike other drummers who were celebrated for their technical skill or showmanship, Ringo was recognised for his ability to serve the song in a way that few others could. His place in rock history was further cemented when, in 2015, Ringo Starr became one of the few artists to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice. He was first inducted as a member of the Beatles in 1988, alongside John Lennon, Paul McCartney, and George Harrison. But his second induction as a solo artist was a remarkable achievement in its own right. It was a testament to Ringo's sustained influence and musical achievements both with the Beatles and in his solo career. A knighted legacy. Ringo's honours and recognition. Perhaps the crowning achievement of Ringo's career came in 2018 when he was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II. The honour, awarded for his services to music, was a fitting recognition of Ringo's decades of musical achievements and his lasting impact on the world of popular music. Becoming Sir Richard Starkey was a testament to Ringo's exceptional contributions to both British and global music culture. This honour served as a reminder of just how far Ringo had come, from being a struggling musician in Liverpool to one of the most celebrated figures in the history of modern music. Despite his incredible career and accomplishments, Ringo has remained remarkably humble, often downplaying his own talents and expressing gratitude for the opportunity to be part of the Beatles' legendary journey. He has always maintained that he was just lucky to have been a part of such an iconic band, but his influence, charm, and musicality are undeniable. Ringo's place in the pantheon of rock legends is secured, and his legacy will undoubtedly continue to inspire musicians for generations to come. The personal life of Ringo Starr. Beyond the stage, Ringo Starr's personal life has been just as fascinating as his musical career. While he became a household name through his work with the Beatles, his private life was often less in the spotlight, yet no less eventful. Ringo's relationships, family life, and personal struggles offer a deeper understanding of the man behind the drum kit. Love, marriage, and family. Ringo first met Maureen Cox, a hairdresser, in 1962, the same week he officially joined the Beatles. Their whirlwind romance led to a marriage in February 1965, with Beatles manager Brian Epstein serving as the best man. The wedding was a high-profile affair, and the public's fascination with the couple was captured in the novelty song Treat Him Tender Maureen by the Chiclets, further cementing their status as a beloved couple in the public eye. Together, Ringo and Maureen had 3 children: Zach, born in 1965, Jason, born in 1967, and Lee, born in 1970. The family lived in a sprawling mansion, Tittenhurst Park, in Berkshire, which Ringo purchased from John Lennon in 1971. However, the couple's marriage was strained by infidelities, and after a decade together, they divorced in 1975. Tragically, Maureen passed away from leukemia in 1994 at the age of 48, a loss that deeply affected Ringo. A new beginning. Marriage to Barbara Bach in 1980, Ringo met actress Barbara Bach on the set of the film Caveman. Their chemistry was instant, and their romance blossomed quickly, leading to marriage in 1981. Together, they built a life that was a mix of glamour and privacy. They divided their time between homes in Crawley, Surrey, Los Angeles, and Monte Carlo, creating a life that was balanced between the public demands of fame and the private joys of family life. Barbara and Ringo shared a strong bond, and over the years, their relationship proved to be a stable and enduring part of Ringo's life. The couple remains together to this day, with Barbara playing a key role in Ringo's life and career. Wealth and personal life outside of music. Despite his fame and fortune, Ringo has always maintained a grounded lifestyle. He has been known to embrace a health-conscious lifestyle, following a vegetarian diet for many years. Additionally, Ringo practices daily meditation and follows his now iconic motto of peace and love. His commitment to mindfulness and personal well-being has played a key role in helping him navigate the pressures of fame and the challenges of life. In 2011, Ringo was listed as number 56 on the Sunday Times Rich list, with an estimated fortune of £150 million. By 2012, he was recognised as the wealthiest drummer in the world. Yet, despite his wealth, Ringo remains down-to-earth and focused on the things that matter most to him: family, health, and music. Ringo Starr and the Beatles breakup. A candid reflection. In recent years, Ringo Starr has become more candid about his experiences during the tumultuous final years of the Beatles. For decades, the exact causes of the band's disintegration remained a subject of much speculation. In a bombshell confession, Ringo revealed that Yoko Ono played a far greater role in the band's breakup than had previously been acknowledged. According to Ringo, Yoko's presence in the studio and her influence over John Lennon created a rift within the band. The Beatles, once a united creative force, were now divided, with John and Yoko on one side and the rest of the band on the other. Ringo recalls the atmosphere during the recording of the White Album as one of growing tension and frustration, particularly as Yoko's constant presence in the studio pushed the other members of the band further apart. Ringo's candid reflection on these events underscores the emotional toll the band's breakup took on him. He witnessed the fracturing of a brotherhood that had once been the driving force behind some of the most iconic music in history. Yet, through it all, Ringo showed remarkable resilience, overcoming personal challenges, including his battle with